Transgender therapy for children of all ages is gaining popularity at a cosmic speed all over the world. Well, we'll talk about that with Jeff Younger, the man who is fighting for his son to remain a boy. Jeff Younger is father of the 7-year-old James. Jeff, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us. At the very beginning, when your son James first told you that he was a girl, what was your reaction? I mean, were you taken aback? Did you take it seriously?
I took it very seriously because I'd had some information when I was still living with Ann Georgelis, my ex-wife. She had been putting him into timeouts and saying things like the monsters only eat boys and some odd things like that. So when I heard this, I took it very seriously. He said, "Mommy tells me I'm a girl." And I would ask him, you know, "Do you look like a girl?" And he'd say, "No, but Mommy tells me I'm a girl."
So James is being dressed as a girl. His name was changed to Luna. He attends the girls' bathroom at school. So if everything goes ahead like James's mother wants, your 7-year-old boy will be given puberty-blocking hormones, and in a couple of years will undergo sex change surgery. I mean, it's kind of hard to ask, but how does it make you feel?
Look, I consider this to be child abuse and the sexual mutilation of children on an industrial scale. So it makes me feel terrible. I can't believe that a mother would do this to her son. And I cannot believe that the state of Texas would allow it and sanction it. But we have clinics right here in Texas that do sex changes on children all the time.
Michelle Cretella is the president of the American College of Pediatricians. She just wrote a piece in which she says, we're quoting now, "Transgender ideology has infiltrated my field and produced large-scale child abuse." Cretella says doctors are encouraging parents to have their kids change genders when there's no evidence these changes are safe or even helpful.
We at the American College of Pediatricians, and also I have many colleagues on the left, also insist that those solutions be rooted in reality, and transgender ideology is not. Sex is hardwired from before birth, and it cannot change. And that's why we've actually called this child abuse, because by feeding children and families these lies, children are having their normal psychological development interrupted. They're being put on the puberty blockers, which essentially castrates them chemically, followed by surgical mutilation later on. This is child abuse. It's not. Children who are ages 3 to 10, they engage in magical thinking. They don't know the difference so easily between fantasy and reality. We need to nurture them through adolescence, through natural puberty. Our job as parents and physicians is to help children embrace their healthy bodies. And when this is done, once they get past puberty into late adolescence, as many as 95% will come to embrace their bodies and identify with their biological sex.
What do we know about the effects of heavy-duty hormones, synthetic hormones given to little kids, like long-term?
Right. Well, we don't have long-term studies, which is a major problem, which is why physicians should not be telling parents that this is settled science and that it is safe. We do know that when puberty blockers are used appropriately in other settings, that we have observed in adults. For example, they can be used to treat prostate cancer and some gynecologic issues in women, that there's evidence that you can impact memory and cognitive ability in a negative way. And as far as the cross-sex hormones, if you have a young child on puberty blockers who goes directly to cross-sex or sex change hormones, they become sterile. You're sterilizing children. They can't possibly, little children cannot possibly understand the risk of having a medication and then never being able to have children in the future.
So I didn't know that. There's a lot I don't know about this. Again, this has all happened so fast. I don't think most people really know what's going on. But what's the youngest age at which kids are getting these kind of drugs?
The guidelines suggest that puberty blockers be given at ages 11 to 12, but I've had reports from colleagues across the country, and you can also find them in various news reports, that children as young as 9 have been put on these puberty blockers. And what it does, it arrests normal development. Puberty is not a disease. You know, you're stopping it.
In the long history of war, it may have been one of the craziest, downright laughable ideas, a so-called gay bomb.
The idea was that if soldiers suddenly all became irresistible to one another, that unit morale and cohesion would break down and the enemy would be unable to resist.
The idea of a non-lethal chemical bomb containing aphrodisiacs was among nearly 200 proposals the Pentagon received in 1994, this one from an Air Force lab in Ohio. It pitched what it called a distasteful but completely non-lethal example, especially if the chemical also caused homosexual behavior. The Defense Department says it had all the ideas reviewed, and that the gay bomb proposal was among those not making the cut. The Pentagon released a statement saying it never investigated the concept. It was just one individual putting together a concept paper with a variety of examples that were rejected. But members of the California watchdog group Sunshine Project don't buy that.
When the Pentagon says that they rejected this proposal, it's simply not true, and we have the facts to demonstrate that they've continued to think about it and to consider it in the years since it was first raised.
What percentage of the U.S. population today would identify as LGBT based on your data?
The best estimates that we have for the percentage of the population in the U.S. that identify as LGBT are around 4%. Various surveys range from roughly 3 to 5% in most surveys. You do get occasionally some surveys that are higher than that. One interesting thing about those surveys is among younger people, it's always substantially higher. So for instance, in the Gallup survey, if you're under age 30, it's well over 6% identifying as LGBT, but if you're over 30, it's under 4%. So I suspect that in the fairly near future, those numbers are going to continue to go up. But if you use these other measures like sexual behavior or sexual or your attractions to either people of the similar gender to you or different gender to you, you get much higher numbers. If you ask people if they've ever had a same-sex sexual encounter, you usually get numbers in the 8 to 9% range. And if you ask if they have any kind of attractions that are beyond different sex attractions, so any sort of same-sex attractions, you often get numbers well over 10%.
And do you think those numbers are going to change over time? I mean, obviously
they
age, but...
Already. In surveys, we don't have a lot of older surveys that ask these kinds of questions, but certainly if we look at some surveys from the early 90s, sexual orientation identity, so identifying at that point it was usually just lesbian, gay, or bisexual, it was only in about the 2% range. So it's more than doubled in the last 10 years.
Are there...
Yes, you read that correctly. Bruce, or Caitlyn Jenner, is apparently miserable and may actually detransition back to being a man. Dr. Eowyn dropped a bombshell over the D.C. clothesline. Ooh, oh goodness gracious, I'm so sorry to inflict that photograph upon you. Look at those man hands on that man-woman face. Ugh, such a travesty of mental disorder. Really, I hope this person gets some serious help when they finally return to being a man.
This kind of transphobic and bigoted hate speech isn't gonna fly here, bro! I thought we were all on board that Caitlyn Jenner is an amazing, beautiful woman who had the exquisite bravery of a butterfly flying against the wind. And then this comes out of people's mouths!
Anyway, the bombshell was dropped over at DC Clothesline. They reported that after undergoing torturous facial feminizing plastic and breast implant surgeries, Bruce call me Caitlyn Jenner now regrets all of it. Exactly.
I am going off hormones. These last 3 years of my life have been the most transformative of my life. Especially if you've been here since the beginning, you guys have seen me through so many huge changes in my life. You've seen me through breakups and meeting someone new and getting engaged and moving and surgeries. You guys have literally been in the operating room with me as I was vlogging, getting my facial feminization surgery and my breasts. Officially, for now, going off of hormones and basically detransitioning, reversing the clock in terms of all the progress I've made in my body with hormones for one reason, but it is a really, really huge reason. It's the only reason I ever would. And that reason is I want to be a parent. I want to have kids. I want to have a family.
As a woman for 8 years, now believes that transitioning was an unnecessary journey.
I transitioned in 1983. And began to detransition in about 1990, 1991. I've gone back to being Walt. And so I'm married now for 21 years, and that's in brief my journey. It started at the age of 4 or 5 for me. You know, I was very curious about gender. Grandma was a seamstress. Whatever happened, I ended up with a purple chiffon dress at the age of 4 or 5. I was sort of taken back by how she admired me so much as a little girl in that purple dress, and it planted a seed within me that I was much better as a girl than I was as a boy. Time went on, and in April of 1983, I underwent gender reassignment surgery and became Laura Jensen. I had the full top and bottom surgeries. The initial reaction was really powerful. I felt like I had finally made it. I found all the roadblocks were hitting me about getting work, and so I ended up homeless. And I started looking in my own life. I began to think, well, was this really necessary? Was taking hormones and undergoing radical surgery really going to resolve the issues that got you to this place? But the detransition process is not quick. It takes time because you have built all these things around your life. As a female, you have all these things in place, and to sort of dismantle them, I found is really difficult, much more so than it was to transition. It is categorically, scientifically, intellectually, biblically, or any other way possible to change from one gender to the other. Gender reassignment surgery really doesn't make you a female. It's much more to being a woman than just having some cosmetic surgery and hormones. When you start playing with that design that God has for you, you know, you end up in the dump heap.